Okay, folks, running a little late today, but I hope you are in the classroom and ready to get started. Give it a few more minutes because I just opened the door. And as you come into the classroom, if you want to go ahead and post that you're here, then I'll know and can get started. Again, usually I start opening the door 5 minutes too, but not today. Yay, Louise is here. Good. Okay, Louise, which video are you dealing with that's not working for you? Because we have videos on Facebook and we have videos in the classroom in Teachable. Or were you just saying that as you went to get in, Facebook wasn't playing the video? Okay, but it was not working before because you probably clicked in early because I'm always here early, except for today. And so that's why it was having problems, is that you were, anyway, so good news is it's not Facebook's fault. It just is something that happens with them. Signing out and signing back in is exactly, it is because normally I'm in here and I open the classroom 5 minutes or so early. And so when you come in, you can click and immediately get into the classroom. But today, because I was not in here already, when you click, nothing was going to happen until I got in here. So we can blame a lot of things on Facebook, but this one was not. It was me being running late. Jan's here. That's really great. Jan, I hope you got my feedback on your postings that you posted online. I raised some questions. I know that you've got them covered, but I wanted to raise them because in a classroom like this, when I see something that I know you've got and you know you've got, but somebody else doesn't see it, then I can confuse them. So that's why sometimes, even for those that we did our one-on-one, I know you got it, but for the sake of the others in the classroom, by indicating this is also happening, or are you clear about that, that lets them know that there might be a little more work that they want to do on their work that they're not posting and not getting feedback on. Okay, so Jan's okay, that's great. Going to give it one more minute here. I'm glad, Beth Ann, that you're taking advantage of other people's posts to make sure that you read them, because it may not be an issue that you're dealing with in your particular story right now, but down the road, the Facebook group will be open to all the students in this course. But that's not saying that Facebook isn't at some point going to just basically say, oh, nobody's in here doing anything, so I'm just going to delete it all. So it's always good to copy your own work, like Louise has been doing, and so that you have specific answers, but also anything that you think, I may be dealing with that in this next book or a future book, or in my past book. Make sure that you go ahead and you copy it. Okay, so it looks good. Exactly, Louise. That's who says, I didn't understand secondary stories till I saw the examples in the homework. And that's why we do it, is that I don't expect everybody to get it immediately. because that's not how we learn. We learn by trying and almost doing it and try a little more and come back and revisit. So, okay, it looks like we're going to have a very small group here today. So I'll just go ahead and start. What's important here is okay, I know that you posted this once on Facebook, Louise, and I answered it, and then you posted it again. I don't know what Facebook has out for you, but I wanted to try something different, which is responding to it to the group, because more than one person has mentioned and had the same issues that you are. And this is what Louise posted for Sam, her male character in a romance. What I have is a concern for example 4 and example 6. Let me make sure that I've got this right. Exercise 4. I know what exercise 6 is, but I want to make sure I've got exercise 4. Exercise 4 is the inciting incident. And then exercise 6 is based on that incident. What action does your character take at quarter of the way into the story? Back to Louise. Sam's choice is about keeping Kate safe and letting others pursue the outlaws. They look similar, but are at different times in the story. Example, in exercise 4, the inciting incident, she's recovering from a gunshot wound and Sam feels enormous guilt. He could not protect her and do his job. At template 5 or exercise 6, the gang comes after her and he needs to get her out of town to keep her safe. Sam's choice for both are to keep Kate safe and send someone else after the gang. Is that too similar, or does it work because of the external goal and the subplot of the gang activity? The gang activity, the subplot is the outlaws that are harassing the town and the area. And Sam's job as the sheriff is to mitigate that harassment. So I'm almost glad that Facebook lost the last one, because I did reply to this, but I want to clarify because some other people are also dealing with this. If you have the same motivation, which is in this case, Sam has the same motivation, protect this woman who is vulnerable. Now, the first time he's the inciting incident is the outlaws were on a train and the female character, they were trying to take her away. Sam was incapacitated by the outlaws, but so he could do nothing. He felt really bad about that, but he couldn't do anything. The outlaws were trying to take her away, but the female character had a derringer secreted on her body and raised it and shot one of the outlaws. As a result, another outlaw shot her. So that's one situation. The second situation, Sam knows the outlaws are coming back for this woman. Currently, she's staying with friends where she wanted to recuperate. Rather, Sam offered to find a place for her, but she said no, she'd go with the friends and recuperate. But they're coming back again. So this time, while the motivation is the same for Sam, the male character, to make sure she's safe, he is wants to take her to an isolated place that he knows it will keep her friends safe, but he also knows that it's his place, so it's less likely for the outlaws to come after or even find this place. So the motivation stays the same. That's okay. But what you've done here well is, yes, the outlaws were the ones that were coming after her in the inciting incident, and yes, the outlaws are still coming after her in the template 5 when things change. And she agrees to go with him, even though he's a big man and she doesn't know him well, and she's afraid based on her previous experience with her bully husband. So they may sound the same, but they're two very different situations. So you can repeat the type of situations, but make something different in them. So if in the middle point of the story, there's a character and the character finally admits something, and is forgiven about it, later in the story at template 8, it comes up that he didn't admit all his crimes. So that means that, yes, it's the same issue, but it's going to have different ramifications. And that's what several people are finding, that they're thinking that the issue, the fear that your character and the situation, the external threat on that character, it's going to get a different response the more deeper into the story they are. So what they do at template 5 and the action that they are taking is not, they're going to react differently. Why? Because they're growing and changing. Their willingness to act in template 5 makes it easier to do something in template 8 that they would never have done right from the beginning of the story. And again, because whatever they did in template 8 makes it easier to, when they face the same issue, that fear, and the external pressure may also be similar, but they're going to have a different response because now they've, in template 8, whatever they did, got them closer to the love interest or the external problem that they're looking to solve. So they're going to approach it slightly differently, or they're going to do a total different response. It's kind of like the bully in a classroom. Okay, the bully. New kid comes to school. First thing, the inciting incident is the bully knocks him down because that person's a bully and this person is the new kid. In template 5, he ignores the bully and walks away. Well, that just pisses the bully off. So in template 8, he may fight back for the bully, but he ends up getting suspended from school. So the ramifications aren't that great, but he feels better about it because he did stand up. And because he stand up, he has other kids in the school that are now seeking his friendship because he was willing to stand up to this guy. So in template 10, the do or die moment, the bully comes with friends. And so the new kid decides, if I fight him again and get kicked out of school totally, my parents are really going to be upset. If I hurt him, my dad in particular is really going to be angry, and he doesn't want his father angry at him. But the alternative, to turn and run, means that every kid that this bully is going to bully is going to think, eventually they'll turn and run. So instead he decides, all right, I'm fighting. That's it. I'm alone, but I'm going to fight. Yes, there's 5 of them, but I'm going to fight. But what happens then is, because of the growth and change that has happened during the course, all of a sudden 7 of his friends show up. And no, they're not the best fighters, but they're the more determined group because they are with him. They understand this is it. This is telling the bully, and the bully, being a bully, is not used to having to fight. He's used to just knocking him down or hitting him, and that's all he has to do. Well, now there's equal or greater numbers going against him. And so that's the do or die moment in that particular story. Okay. So same type of situation at each time, but things change as a result of the growth that the characters has gone through in the story. Hope, I'm sorry that you had to deal with a bully like that. I think grade schools are where they grow bullies, and bullies, if not stopped, continue to bully. And that's just, and oftentimes educators try to do the best thing, but bullies aren't idiots. They are, let's do it off the school ground, or let's do it where nobody's going to see it, or let's do it where somebody who's my ally is going to turn the other way. So as a writer, you can use that situation and go back and fix that and change the story. Jan is saying, I'm still wrestling with the midpoint, both my characters, and she's just drawing a blank. That's why we do the one-on-one. All right. We have 1 week left to do the one-on-one. So we talk it over based on what's gone up to a certain point in your story, and then brainstorm options. So that's the whole function of the one-on-one, is to help you over those speed bumps in your story so they don't have to stop you. And the way you do a one-on-one, several people here today, you just send me a direct email to mary@marybuckham.com. Give me a day that works best for you and a rough time, and tell me what your time zone is. I'm available from 10 a.m. in the morning until 9 p.m. at night. So I'm sure we can find a time in there. Talk for an hour, get you over that, get you going on your story. That's the whole function of the one-on-one. And being blocked doesn't have to, it's not like it's a huge thing that never can move forward. Being able to talk it over with someone else is just a very simple, quick, easy way to get beyond it. Because obstacles, we work really hard to have conflict in our story and have reasons for our characters not to do stuff. So when we get them to a point in the story that it's like, I don't know what they're going to do next, that's because we, as the author, are looking at them like they are characters we have to move them around on the scene. And the reality is sometimes it's getting out of our own head and getting into our characters. What's the thing that they're going to be afraid of most? That's why we look at their fear that uses their belief system. Why are they afraid of whatever it is? And it is, if this happens, then that happens. That's what they have to face. So that's what template 10, the black moment, is going to involve, is that issue. Sometimes it's easier to figure out what happens at 10 by going to the end of the story. What's going to happen at the end of the story? A lot of times we have those answers, and then we backtrack. There is nothing that says we have to write a story from the beginning on a linear way, chapter by chapter by chapter, till the end. So you can start from the back. You could start from the middle, wherever it is, now that you know what type of things have to happen. So what we have here, let me see, we go. Helen's saying that she is using the main character's templates to write out a synopsis of the whole book from her point of view. And that's brilliant too, because to write a synopsis for real, to submit to an editor and agent, you just need template 1. This character is like that. The other character is like this. Template 5. Because here you told them in the first 2 parts, what their issue that they're dealing with. Template 5 is that first step that they're going to take to fix things. Then you can go to the midpoint of the story when they realize X. So they've made some incremental growth and they get together as a couple in some way. It could be a handshake, it could be a kiss, it could be sex, whatever it is, if you're writing a romance. If you're not writing a romance, whatever happens in the middle, they get a clue that they think has solved everything. Then you go to the black moment. And then in a synopsis, make sure you resolve it. They don't need to know that there's, I'm not going to tell you until you read the book. No, that's not professional. Their job is to see, does this story hold together? So template 1, template 5, template 8, template 10, and resolve it. Okay. Now, you can do those paragraph by paragraph if you need a short synopsis. One paragraph for the template 1, one paragraph for template 5, template 8, the same thing, moves right into template 10, the black moment, and then resolve it. So it can be done in 1 page, it can be done in 2 pages, whatever it is. Helen's doing it so that she can write the book. And that's exactly what, when you have an idea of the story structure, you can set it aside. You don't need to use it as something to whip you or tie you into knots. Set it aside. You can always refer to it if you need to, or as you're going along and you're kind of getting, let me get lost, pull it back out again and say, this is why, because I'm just having stuff happening to my character, or I'm decided I'm going to introduce another character's issue before the first character does something in template 5 or in template 8. I forgot it's a romance and I'm too much focused on the mystery or the suspense element of it. So it's there for you. A synopsis is meant to be your friend. But when we start out of the blue trying to write one, we're kind of going, and so what happens is we tend to focus a lot on the opening because that's what we know a lot of. And then something happens in the story. Now, once you hit the New York Times list, you could probably get away with that. Once you've done 40 novels, you could probably get away with that. Once you've worked with the same agent or editor for 15, 20 years, you can get away with that. But then all that has to happen is a new editor comes in or a new agent comes in, or they change the publication expectations. And then they're going to have you go back to writing that synopsis that you've been avoiding. So it's kind of like going to the dentist. A lot of us don't like going to the dentist. So what happens is we get big hissy fits and drag our feet. And then when we go, and it was an hour or 2, we come away and it's like, we did it. Yes, that's over. Yes, that's what we're doing when we're hitting these speed bumps. So I hope that helps a little bit. The Facebook group that you're on, because you're all going to be in there, you can, and you've seen where other people have given great feedback. You might do a shout out on that and say, hey, I got to template 5 and I don't know what's going to happen. And someone may step forward and say, okay, write what your inciting incident was and what are they afraid of? And then they can see, are you on track, or give you some ideas, or it's one more opportunity to connect with other people who are committed to improving their craft. And there's nothing that improves one's craft than reading other people's work and starting to realize, there's a speed bump over here, the possible plot hole, and you can see it, raise a question. They may have the answer for it. It's just not typed in. So you're doing them a favor and you're doing yourself a favor. So that's a real win-win. The other thing is that in this group, you've got people from, I think, this is an unusual group because most people are from the US in it. Usually we have a couple of people from around the world in the course. So you're getting feedback from people who are eventual readers. What's one of those things that happen to us is we go to a writers group near where we live, and we make some friends and we maybe start exchanging work with them and they became a critique book, but they're all from the same environment. So you can, what is perfectly clear to someone who is from that environment may not make sense to someone who is across the country. I'll give you an example. There was a group that worked together. They've been 20 years working together, and they were from a deep southern state. And a southern state that grew peanuts. And in a story, they were judging for something. Someone had the male character call the woman Peanut. Well, she was aghast. And she went to her group and they said, oh no, you don't call anybody by that name. It was because where they were, that was such a bad name. Now, it was right of her to be wary of that, but it shouldn't be diminished totally because where the book was set or where the characters were in that particular book, it may not have been as big an issue as if that was told in the Deep South. So hope ask a question. Does the Facebook group end when the course ends? No, it stays open for you. So that way you can go back and see the feedback. You can see these question and answer sessions, and you can communicate with one another if you choose. Okay. We still have in this upcoming week, we're still going to have 2 things of homework to post. One is exercise 10, and this is based on template 9. And the question is, what internal change has happened to this character as a result of what happened at the midpoint of the story, or template 8? And that's why I harp about, particularly for writing romance, something has to change about the character. They don't have to be in love. They don't have to have sex. They don't have to agree to marry, though they could agree to marry and then at the black moment break up. Rest of that is, what has the character realized about themselves or about their relationship? So you're not just making something up out of the wild blue that has not been foreshadowed all the way along in your story by the answers you've given at the previous templates. The next homework is exercise 11, and this is based on the black moment or the climax if you're not writing a romance. This is template 10. It's what crisis or disaster has happened to the relationship. I use both of those terms intentionally. Yes, the midpoint is the crisis of the story, technically, when things change, but the crisis here is a disaster. If you're writing something that is a rom-com or an inspirational romance or something that is sweet and not meant to be extremely tense, the term crisis sometimes is easier to understand. Still has to have a black moment. So use whichever word works for you. But what crisis or disaster has happened to the relationship that shows for a character that they have lost all belief in love? or in a happy ever after, or a happy for now. Do this for one character at a time, and I recommend you post them in 2 different posts, because that's why I'm not trying to get a huge big post and may miss the fact that one character got answered, but the second character did not get answered. So just 2 different posts is great. And this is the black moment. And what I'll be doing is looking at that black moment, and based on the inciting incident and what their character belief is, I'm going to see, does this black moment relate to that? Or if it's just, again, out of the blue, and then this happened to him, and that happened, and that happened. No, it is their choices and decision throughout the story that led them to this point, to either really face their fear or to revert to the person they were earlier in the story. Now, if they don't face their fear, you're writing a literary novel. So things are just going to go on. You may not write about it. Okay, Helen says, how many characters in a story should you fill out templates for? Just the main characters? Yes. Because the more you fill out the templates, the more word count those people are taking up. For secondary characters, if they're a big secondary character, you may do the 1st and the 5th, maybe the 8th, but they're not what the story is about. So focus on the 2 main characters. If you have a menage a trois, or 3 main characters, 2 characters, and the villain, then you do the 2 characters, and the villain might be the external, like in a romantic suspense. You have a villain that's going to do something bad. If one of these 2 or both of these characters don't stop that villain, then that character should probably get a 1. They're going to react to the romance, and after the 5 happens, they're going to react to what the main characters have done. After 8 has happened, they're going to react to what has happened to the characters. And then when they go up to 10, because in something like a romantic suspense, the suspense element also, that character has his own story, and he's a major character. Without him, the other characters would not have to be, they could just focus on the romance, but they can't, because this guy or woman is still causing problems. So at the end of that character's story, though, they do not change. There's not meant to be. So if they were determined in the beginning of the story, they're still determined right up until they get their justice. If they were ambitious, they stay ambitious. If they were, whatever the character trait is for this character, and you don't need 3, just 1 would be fine for them. You just don't change them in the story. Does that help a little bit, Helen? Beth Ann asks, can you please explain a little more about shows for a character that they have lost all belief in love? Is it a choice the main character has to make based on the black moment? Yes. Either to revert back to their old belief or keep moving forward. Yes. And that's why they have a black moment. This is leading up to the black moment. That they have this, I knew it was never going to work out. So you go, and the black moment happens, and only after the black moment are their belief system going to change. So if someone thinks, I can't do this because it's like your character, I'm going to be really visible. What I'm doing is putting a target on my back. The likelihood of getting out of this is life or death. And I should just turn around and go back. And they might even start, but then they realize it's no, because a person that they love is in trouble and they need to face that. So it is going to be, that's a do or die. That's a, I thought you loved me, but you didn't, you betrayed me. My fear is based on betrayal. So that's the black moment. I thought that I could be independent and you could honor that and I can remain independent. But no, you demanded that I do something that's going to work for you, but not for me. What do I do about that? Does that help a little bit, Beth Ann? So it's simply that whenever they're going to do what they have to do is going to be scary. It's going to be the scariest thing they've ever faced. And what do we do when we face something like that? We kind of go a little forward and then rethink this, and then maybe a little bit forward, and then, oh God, this is too hard. And then tough, do it anyway. And they do, and they save them the relationship and risk themselves and keep going and save the other. So if you're doing a level 2, let's see, would the third get a level 2? You're doing a suspense, correct, with romantic elements. In that case, yeah, they get a level 2 also. Look at the, trying to think of what the movies are again. That's the best example of that. It's kind of like Prince Humperdinck is that character in Princess Bride. Aeon Flux, absolutely. The brother in Aeon Flux is that third character. Now, I don't know that we did the templates for that third character for any of these, but take a look at it. That's the one person that until that person is out of the way, the couple is never going to have any kind of future together. Jen also said, or would the villain get level 1 templates? Not in a suspense story. They're not going to get level 1 because it's level 2. It's do or die all the way through it. If you are writing something, a cozy mystery with somebody off scene that is the killer or the ones causing the problems, all of them would have level 1. So if you have level 2 in the main characters, you're going to have level 2 for the threat. Another question. Helen, can some characters templates happen off scene? For example, my love interest inciting isn't shown on the page. That's a problem because the reader doesn't get to see and experience that. If the inciting incident is something that happened in their past, that's part of their backstory. So there's another inciting incident for them. So there's an inciting incident to this story. It's there. Look at, they're not just, something off scene is off scene and is thus just told to the reader, which is pretty passive. And that's not what you're looking for. If it's because of their backstory, if your love interest isn't going to change that much over the course of the story, they're still going to feel pain for whatever happened at the beginning, then you just don't get rid of pain by the end, but they might accept some way to deal with it. But they should have, the reader should know with that inciting incident is. This is where you might have a prologue for the secondary character, and you actually introduce them first, because that prologue happened X number of years ago, not months, but X number of years ago, and then you get to the point of view character of the other character, and that's where the story starts in chapter 1. Okay, Helen's saying, I think what I mean is that his inciting isn't shown from his point of view. This is when you have one character who it's mostly their point of view, in this case, the female, but his inciting incident is going to be shown from the female's point of view. That can work. If it is something that the point of view character experienced, or again, you're writing women's fiction. So in women's fiction, if you have it along a more literary feel, so Helen's saying is he comes into Joanna's bookstore. That's not off scene. It's on scene, because she sees him coming into the store. We're not in his point of view, but we see him coming into the store. So yes, that can work. Sometimes it can be very challenging to say there's always exceptions. There's always ways to make something work. So when you have, like in Helen's situation, it's mostly the story of her female character. But when that male character comes into the story, the reader has seen it. They've seen her response to him. They've seen her emotional response, any physical response, any dismissal of him, any what she likes about him. All of that says this character is important. We're going to see more of him. So yes, in that situation. But what I don't want to do is say emphatic no, yes, because someone else is writing a different kind of story and they may have a situation. And for example, this one with Helen's story, that can work when you have primarily one point of view. So you have to show the other characters what's going, their stages in some way when you're only using one point of view. You may not go into as much depth with them. Because we're only getting what the point of view character is seeing, feeling, experiencing about that. Okay. Now, want to let you know, this coming week, week 4, is all about pulling it together. So you get those last templates, template 10, which is the black moment, or climax if you're writing non-romance. 11, wrapping it up, how you do that. And then you do scene and sequel. Now, some of you I've talked to about this. Scene and sequel are, okay, so you've got your 12 templates. 1 through 11, you literally line out your book, what's going to happen there, basically what could happen. If you don't have an answer for a question, you can skip it and always come back to it. But 11 templates filled out might come to a couple thousand words, and you have 80,000 words, or you have 90,000, you have 120,000, whatever it is. How do you fill in all those other words? Well, this is where scene and sequel come in. This is magic stuff. This is smaller building blocks. that are easy to understand. And in fact, when I first learned about scene and sequel, I went and plotted a whole book out just using scene and sequel to see how it worked. And so don't dismiss scene and sequel. You have these lectures forever, but it is scene and sequel that is, when I was starting out, inevitably, every New York Times author I spoke said, what's the last thing you learned that helped you? And they said, scene and sequel. And you might have learned it as action, reaction. And it's literally how you take block by block by block and build the story. What happened in the last block impacts this next block. You change point of view. What happened, the previous scene may not be in the same point of view, so you go back to the one underneath them. So last scene by that character's point of view. So it makes you sure that a character is driving their story instead of you as the author driving it. So don't skip that. Because there's an analysis, there's scene, which is the action part of the story, and there's sequel, which is the reaction part, which lets the reader know, okay, this didn't work, so they still are going to have dilemmas, which is another way of saying choices. What are they going to do next? We're, as the reader, are in with them. Then there is potential scene and sequel errors, the most common ones that I've seen with about them. And there's also a bonus handout for writing hooks and again, another total blank plotting template so that that's yours to download. Don't know if it says one or if it says two or if it's both of them. So there's lots of good stuff in the very end of the workshop, and I know it can be overwhelming, but you want it to be handy. Helen, what is writing a hook? Writing a hook is literally, how do you go throughout a story raising questions we think that raising a question is, am I going to catch the killer? And that's good for the whole book. It's not. Hook you're going to find at the end of every chapter. You're going to find it on the opening page, first line, to engage the reader, give them a reason to keep going. There's 10 universal hooks, and they are listed on the handout. And if you start analyzing somebody else's work that kept you awake late at night when you plan to go to sleep, they're using hooks. It's why you can read Gone with Wind and fall asleep at night. Not only because it's a huge book, but because she doesn't have hooks. They weren't required then. But it's like you can watch on TV, if you watch a TV show, you can, right before the end of the first part of the story, before the commercial break, they put a hook in there. They raise a question, and they use one of the 10 universal ways of doing that. And then they start up again. And the next part that they break for commercial break, they've used a hook in there. Helen says Stephen King must use, absolutely he uses hooks. He's a master of them. He does not take for granted that you are going to set the book down after 20 minutes at night, which most people do in reading, maybe a half an hour into the night. You're going to set the book down, and if it doesn't give you a reason to come back to that book to find out what's going to happen next, it's because he hasn't been using hooks to all the way along. It's like little burrs that action adventure. The stronger the tension in a story, the more hooks you're using. In a cozy mystery, you might use 1 or 2 hooks at the end of a chapter. In an action adventure, many times you're going to see 3 to 5 at the end of the chapter. So that's all part of the hook handout. You can see them very clear there. On this coming Friday, if you're a member of the Fictionary group, Fictionary, I'm going to be doing a workshop for them on hooks and reading some 20 of the students' first lines to see what they have or what they might still want to make it. Hope says Hallmark movies put hooks right before a commercial break. All of them put hooks. All TV shows put hooks before the commercial break. It's gives you a reason to, after you go grab something to eat or go throw the laundry in or whatever it is you do during a commercial break, other than watch the commercials, you need a reason to come back and find out something immediately. And that's what the hook is going to do, is it's going to give you reasons. So your first page, first sentence, you're going to have hooks in it. End of the first paragraph, you're going to have more hooks. Halfway down the story, you're going to have another hook in there. And then at the bottom of the page, so about 250 words, so anywhere from 240 words on, you're going to put another hook to give the reader a reason to flip the page. So Jackie says, so hooks aren't just at the beginning of the book. No, absolutely not. But each chapter beginning and end, each scene beginning and end. There's going to be more hooks right before you hit template 5, right before you hit template 8, right before you hit template 10. And all of that is in the hook course I'm giving to Fictionary on Friday, and I do quite a lot of that. So if you're in my newsletter list, I usually try and let people know where I'm giving classes and if they're available to people outside of a chapter or whatever, and if so, what kind of cost is it? It can be usually about $10, sometimes 15 or something. So yes, then you get an hour of that class plus any examples. Helen, do we have a live session next Saturday? Yes, that's going to be our last one. So if you have questions about Scene and Sequel, bring them along, because I won't have necessarily that much homework to share with you. Beth Ann, do you have a course on hooks? Oh God, yes. I have the short courses, which are about 40 minutes. I also have books. And the book, there's 3 ebooks or 1 book that has all of them. And it's kind of like these books behind me here. I have 3 ebooks on writing active setting, and then I have a print book. And I do the same with hooks. There's a print book. It's available, I think, on Amazon. That brings all of them together. I also have a 10, 11. It's called an evergreen, which means that when you purchase that course, you purchase and it's yours forever. But I'm not there to talk to you or do anything. So, and yes, I have a short thing on Scene and Sequel. I don't even know if I have it up or not. Thank you, Hope. Is giving the link to the Fictionary community, and I will have Tech Guy make sure that I get Fictionary's link up there too. I'll double check with them. Some groups, if you don't, it gives you kind of, they give a preview. Yes, you can join for 1 month and check it out. Some open it up for non-members. I'll be doing one with Orange County romance writers on hooks next month. And if Tech Guy and I can get together, we'll get it up on the website. And so that's a way to get it. And when I do it for a romance group, I try to make a lot of the examples romance examples, which are going to be more gentle than the hooks. Helen says, you mean the course on her website? Are you responding, Helen, to Jan's comment? There's a hook course in Teachable. There's the big one, and there may be a short scene and sequel, like an hour one in Teachable. So look around on Teachable because there's other courses there that can help, but not all of them are live courses. They have me talking in them, or they have, so just a second. Honey, do you know if we have scene and sequel in Teachable? He's going to check on it.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Do you know if we have scene and sequel in Teachable?
I'll have to check.
Okay, he says he's going to check.
I think we do, but I'll need my computer.
Oh, unfortunately, I'm using his computer. So I will have that answer by next week, or I'll just put it on the Facebook group. I'm laughing because he always says the only time I talk to him is around 3 corners and the door is closed. So, but he's used to me giving him a shout out. So I will find out about that for scene and sequel. I know that I have it up someplace. And if you're part of one of the plotting workshops, not this one, but the one for plotting in general, honey, at the end of that plotting workshop for in general plotting, isn't there a lecture on scene and sequel?
There is, it's included in it.
Okay, but that's not an hour course. You're getting in this one, you are getting 1, 2, 3 20-minute sections on scene and sequel, specifically for romance. On the other thing that I offer in the scene and sequel, I think that I offer on Teachable is general fiction and a big long lecture. So you can go stop and then go back and go back. There's more. This is to get you started. But there's also 2 books recommended. Scene and Sequel is part of a book by Dwight Swain, Techniques of the Best-Selling Author. It was written in the 1960s. He was an instructor at Oklahoma or Iowa, and he wrote a great book called Techniques of the Best-Selling Author. And he has a little bit about hooks in there, but they're called scene and sequel, I think, or they're called action reaction. Nope, they're called something else. Anyway, it's in there. So it's a chapter or so, but he takes quite a bit on hooks and shows you how they work. Now, it's 1960s when he wrote this. It's pretty misogynistic. Just I'm warning you ahead of time. But if you get that book, Techniques of the Best-Selling Writers or the Best-Selling Authors, one or the other, by Dwight, D-W-I-G-H-T, Swain, S-W-A-I-N. He's got boatloads of great information there. Dwight Swain's protege, Jack Bickham, like Buckham, only with an I, it's called Scene and something else. He changes the names on it. but it's a whole book based on what he learned from Dwight Swain. So that information is on your lectures when you get to them in week 4, but also wanted to give it 10 techniques of the selling writer, Dwight Swain. And you know that you've really read and absorbed that book when you start just calling him Dwayne, and you forget he has a first name and a last name. You just squish it together and make him Dwayne. Again, another one of those books that the New York Times authors always recommended. And if you can get over that, you can have a whole lesson is what does misogyny look like? That's it. Somebody's saying that, Helen, C.S. Lacan has some good teachable courses about scene writing. She calls it action and reaction, but it's the same exact stuff. And the more you understand that, the easier to write the bits in between these bigger templates. You know it should be happening at this area of your story. So like template 8, it is not one scene. It is not one page. It is not one chapter. It can be multiple. And particularly when you get to template 10, you can have 2 or 3 or 4 chapters just on template 10. So figuring out what can be in those chapters, you use the scene and the sequel. So I hope that that helps a little bit. Again, next week, our last Q&A. Louise, are you okay with the information I gave you on example 4 and example 6 so that I don't put it back into Facebook and lose it? I don't know why it's happening to you, but I haven't heard it happening to anybody else. So I think it's one of those tests, just like we do in our books. We give tests to our characters to overcome and see how committed they are. So the fact that you just didn't give up when it disappeared is the kind of example that you want. Hope says K.M. Weiland also has good information about scene and sequel. Yeah, so it's not, I'm not coming up with this out of the air. I wish I would have. But when you find, and finding K.M. Weiland, she has a great website. And what she does is she works with writers and she helps them. So, and a blog. Okay. So a little bit over the time frame here, but that's because we started a little bit late. So if you have questions, #Q. Remember, when you put a hashtag, don't put a space between the Q or don't put a space between the number, because I think that's why some of them are getting lost in the ether. Facebook can be so picky. So otherwise, thank you for being here this week, and I will see you next week. Okay, so take care, keep writing, have fun with it. If you have questions, #Q. And if you haven't made an appointment yet for your one-on-one and you're stuck, just contact me. All right, so that you're not just flailing in the deep end of the pool. Okay, we'll see you guys later. Take care.